Alright guys, so I decided to go back through a bunch of my old YouTube likes, and I stumbled across some very, very interesting old-school Bill Maher takes. Now, when I was first getting involved in politics, and I was first interested in politics, I really liked Bill Maher, man. I'm semi-embarrassed to admit that now, but, you think back in the day, when you're a young guy and young, boy even, arguably, you're insecure, you're not confident, and I was sort of naturally interested in politics, and then here's this guy who's, super confident, and even crossing the line into, arrogant, but there was something about the certitude that I found appealing, and then I also thought that he often made good points. And what you're about to see, especially maybe the younger people in my audience who weren't familiar with Bill Maher back then, is even though there are some cringe views that he's held for a long time, probably his entire media career, there also were instances of him just, nailing it and really being a voice at times that I felt like, damn, he's saying, the exact things that I think. And he's doing it in a funny way, a charismatic way, a super confident way. So I wanted to go back, and we're going to look at some of Bill Maher's most based takes. Now, some of this stuff you'll see is definitely dated, and probably the parts of it that I don't like are, I feel like as I've gotten older, the hyper-partisanship strikes me as kind of dumb. I'm don't get me wrong, I'm deeply ideological, and I have beliefs and policy ideas that I'm sort of rigid on, but I'm also not, the whole, just rank partisanship strikes me as kind of dumb and kind of self-defeating, because then you can't really expand the tent if half of your commentary is anybody who doesn't already agree with me is a piece of shit. And Bill Maher has a lot of that in this and a lot of smugness, but outside of that, you're going to see he was so much better than he is now. So I'm going to play this. I'll put it on 1.25 times speed, but yeah, let's take a listen, and then I'll react as we go.
And finally, new rule, conservatives have to stop rolling their eyes every time they hear the word France. Like just calling something French is the ultimate argument winner. As if to say, what can you say about a country that was too stupid to get on board with our wonderfully conceived and brilliantly executed war in Iraq?
You can see that, the laugh track is old school and dated as hell, but other than that, look, first point right off the bat. And let's see what year this is. This is, what year is this? I thought it said it. I guess it doesn't say it. I thought it was I think it's 2006 or something like that. But anyway, first point, boom, slamming war. This stuff definitely appealed to me.
And yet, an American politician could not survive if he uttered the simple, true statement, France has a better healthcare system than we do, and we should steal it. Because...
we're 2 points in. He's slamming war, and he's saying we need universal healthcare, we should copy the French system. So now do you see why, when I was first getting involved in politics, I really looked up to this dude, and I idolized this dude for a while? Because for years, this was his show, and it was that mixed with just being funny and edgy. So, that was the shit. And then, look, again, I don't know what happened to the guy. He went from being a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2016 to an Amy Klobuchar supporter in 2020. The Trump era really broke his brain like it broke a lot of people's brains.
Because here, simply dismissing an idea as French passes for an argument. John Kerry? Couldn't vote for him. He looked French. Yeah, as opposed to the other guy who just looked stupid.
See, that's some of the stuff I'm talking about here. The Kerry praise. He also praises Bill Clinton and shit. That's the rank partisanship that strikes me as gross now. And also he massively overlooked Bill Clinton's record because, of course, Bill Clinton was a neoliberal corporatist through and through, and he was basically a Republican. He governed like a Republican. Maher is too partisan to acknowledge that or have or digest that or maybe even learn about that. Who knows if he even knows all the things that Bill Clinton did, but and you could see well, Bush is stupid. It's okay, that's the cheap joke, that's the easy joke, but still, let's continue.
Now, last week, France had an election, and people over there approach an election differently. They vote. 85% of them turned out. You couldn't get 85% of Americans to get off the couch if there was an election between tits and bigger tits and they were handing out free samples.
Sean Penn.
Now maybe.
But see, the edgy. This fake Obama. What's his name? Henry Ford? No. I forget his name. But this guy's a corporate shill. Anyway, yeah, you can see, like, edgy, too. This stuff, of course, is going to appeal to, like, a very young guy. Like a teen dude.
The high turnout has something to do with the fact that the French candidates are never asked where they stand on evolution, prayer in school, abortion, stem cell research, or gay marriage. And if the candidate knows about a character in a book other than Jesus, it's not a drawback. The electorate doesn't vote for the guy they want to have a croissant with. Nor do they care about private lives. In the current race, Ségolène Royal has 4 kids, but she never got married. And she's a socialist. In America, if the Democrat even thinks you're calling him liberal, he grabs an orange vest and a rifle and heads into the woods to kill something.
A little bit of low-key praise for socialism back in the day, Bill Maher.
Madame Royale's opponent is married, but they live apart and lead separate lives. And the people are okay with that for the same reason they're okay with nude beaches. Because they're not a nation of 6-year-olds who scream and giggle if they see pee-pee parts.
Little sex positivity.
They have weird ideas about privacy. They think it should be private. In France, even the mistresses have mistresses. To not have a lady on the side says to the voters, I'm no good at multitasking. Now, like any country, France has its faults, like all that ridiculous accordion music, but their health care is the best in the industrialized world, as is their poverty rate. And they're completely independent of Mideast oil. And they're the greenest country. And they're not fat. And they have public intellectuals in France. We have Dr. Phil. They invented sex during the day, lingerie, and the tongue. Can't we admit we could learn something from them? From now on, all you high-ranking Bush administration officials, because the French are righter than you on most things, when France comes up in conversation, you are not allowed to roll your eyes. The only time you get to do that is when your hooker from Ms. Julia is blowing you.
Yeah, so you can see why I liked it, why I was such a fan. Let's get to. Oh, we got an old school TYT video popping up here. That's another good idea for a video. Break down some old school based jank TYT videos. Anyway. Alright, let's continue here. I don't know what this weird thing here is, but Bill Maher on George Bush. Whoa. I got it on double speed. Let's try that again. What'd I put it on? Did I put it on 1.25? My brain's not working. Alright, here we go.
Jimmy Carter must be shipped off to Guantanamo Bay. Last weekend, former U.S. President and current Al-Qaeda operative, Jimmy Carter, launched an unprovoked attack upon democracy itself.
I know the audio is a little too low on this, but it's just the video, and there's nothing I could do to make it higher. My bad, guys.
By telling an Arkansas newspaper that the Bush administration has been the worst in history, and people were shocked. Arkansas has newspapers?
Like, I know it's a joke. I'm not gonna, get all triggered and be the social justice warrior here, but you can see how, like, some of the commentary, apart from, like, rank partisanship, it's also sort of classist in a way, like elitist anyway.
But once again, we were sucked into a phony controversy about who said what and how it hurts George Bush's feelings. Because when you hurt George Bush, you hurt America's feelings. And when you hurt America's feelings, you hurt the troops. And when that happens, Tinkerbell's light goes out and she dies. Now, as for Carter's assertion, I was up all night on Wikipedia doing an exhaustive study of former presidents, and while other presidents have sucked in their own individual ways, Bush is like a smorgasbord of suck. He combines the corruption of Warren G. Harding, the warmongering of James Polk, and the abuse of power of Richard Nixon. Nixon got in trouble for illegally wiretapping Democratic headquarters. Bush is illegally wiretapping the entire country.
True. Look at young Ben Affleck.
Nixon opened up relations with the Chinese. Bush let them poison your dog. Herbert Hoover who was literally named after a machine that sucks. Sat on his ass through 4 years of depression, but he was an actual engineer, and if I told him about global warming, he would have understood it before the penguins caught on fire. Ulysses S. Grant let his cronies loot the Republic, but he won his Civil War. Harding sucked. But he once said, "I am not fit for this office and never should have been here." So at least he knew he sucked. He never walked off stage like Bush does after one of his embarrassing, language-mangling press conferences with that smirk on his face like, "Nailed it."
Yeah, a little bit of smug liberalism here. I mean, that was his whole shtick, but when he focused on the issues, he was much more appealing.
Or maybe that's just the look you get. You have a showdown with the Democrats and you win. Like he just did with Iraq. You don't get to become the worst president ever without a little help from the other side. You know, I like Jimmy Carter, but when the Republican fake outrage machine pretended to be so upset at his remarks, Carter did what Democrats do and backed down. He said his words were careless and misquoted, and the sun was in his eyes, and his hearing aid went out, and he was molested by a clergyman. Instead of looking them in the eye and saying, "No, I meant what I said because it's true. And speaking as the first citizen of Habitat for Humanity, let me take out my Jimmy Carter toolbox and build you a house where we can meet and you can blow me."
So he fucking hated Bush. He hated him, and of course that's something I completely agreed on. And he was like the most aggressive anti-Bush voice. But look, it was all tied to like the shit that Bush was doing. The tax cuts for the rich, the endless wars, the torture. Like, people forget, man. And they did. Like, the polls show that people have forgotten how terrible Bush was. Like, there was a poll about Bush in the Trump years where Bush's image was rehabilitated because Bush was able to, put a filter on and act like fake presidential, whereas Trump has no filter and he shoots from the hip and he is just like crass. So even like Democrats started liking Bush after he'd been gone for a while. And it's like, no, he was so bad. He was just as bad as Trump, if not worse than Trump. And, Bill Maher was like the voice leading that. And I feel like he was just right on most of the shit he said. I have no idea. J-Mo's garage sale. Hilarious. I wonder if this site still exists. You guys can go check it out if you want. Anyway, let's continue. I got more for you.
Finally, new rule, you can't use the statement, "There will be no cooperation."
God damn it. As you can tell, I listened back to these before. I decided to show all you guys. And I had it on double speed, but I put it down to 1.25 for you.
Oh, lady, thank God you're here. And by God, I mean, Will. And finally, new rule, you can't use the statement, "There will be no cooperation for the rest of the year," as a threat if there was no cooperation in the first part of the year. Here's a word President Obama should take out of his teleprompter: bipartisanship. People only care about it in theory, not in practice. The best thing that happened this year is when Obama finally realized that and said, "Kiss my black ass, we're going it alone, George W. Bush style."
So I think this was like 2010. This is Obama era. And this was at a time when, anybody who's familiar with Obama's time in office knows he constantly reached out to Republicans. He constantly talked about the virtues of bipartisanship and all that stuff. And, Mitch McConnell and John Boehner and the Republican Party, they had zero interest in working with Obama, even when Obama would propose, like, flat-out Republican ideas. They would just shift further right. And, a lot of Maher's commentary at the time was like, would you stop trying to reach out to them and just, like, pass some real shit and do some real shit? And the commentary is good, and it still stands up. The only difference is, at this late date, we now know that the reason why Obama didn't do that is because he didn't want to do that. He doesn't agree with any sort of real left priorities. I mean, at best, he's a centrist. In reality, he's like a moderate Republican in a sense, and he's deeply corporate. So he's all about tweaks around the edges and being like, a manager. He wants to manage our capitalist empire. He wants to be an efficient manager. He doesn't want to like do a real deep effort at reform, getting us closer to social democracy. And so anyway, you're going to see, his commentary here, which some of it stands up, some of it is a little naive about what Obama really believes in his heart.
Now, 2 months ago, conservative Fred Barnes wrote, "The healthcare bill is dead with not the slightest prospect of resurrection." Well, if it's dead, you just got your ass kicked by a zombie named Nancy Pelosi. Seriously, the last time a Democrat showed balls like that, John Edwards' girlfriend was filming it.
So this was right after Obamacare was passed, and it was kind of before we knew how bad it really was. It was a Republican plan, basically, and Obama passed it with a supermajority. He should have at least done a public option. He really should have done single-payer Medicare for all. But, there was still a feeling at the time, for those of you who were around at the time, you'll know this, of fuck, at least we got some sort of healthcare reform done, and now millions more people will get healthcare. And so this was sort of like victory lap time a little bit.
And yet, even before the Democrats got to take a single victory lap, they were being warned not to get drunk with power. I disagree. All you Democrats, do a shot, and then do another. Get drunk on this feeling of not backing down and doing what you came to Washington to do. Well, do not listen to the people who are now saying that nothing else big should be attempted for a while because health care was so rough. Wrong. Because I learned something watching the lying bullies of the right lose this one. When they're losing, they squeal like a pig. They kept saying things like the bill was being shoved down our throats, or the Democrats were ramming it through. The bill was so big they couldn't take it all at once. And you know what? I realized listening to this rhetoric that it reminded me of something. It reminded me of Tiger Woods' text messages to his mistress that were made public last week, where he said, and I quote, "I want to treat you rough, throw you around, spank and slap you and make you sore. I want to hold you down and choke you while I fuck that ass that I own."
I do not want to hear Bill Maher say those words.
Then I'm going to tell you to shut the fuck up while I slap your face and pull your hair for making noise. Unquote. And this, I believe, perfectly represents the attitude the Democrats should now have in their dealings with the Republican Party. Yes, it does. That's what they should be saying to the Republicans. Shut the fuck up while I slap your face for making noise. And now pass a cap and trade law, you stupid bitch, and repeat after me, global warming is real. The Democrats need to push the rest of their agenda while their boot is on the neck of the greedy, poisonous old reptile. Who cares if cap and trade isn't popular? Neither was health care. Your poll numbers may have descended a bit, but so did your testicles. So don't stop. We need...
By the way, I don't know what the numbers were at the time on Obamacare. He seems to be indicating that the polls had gone down. They did go down during the fight. I don't know if they ever went under 50% at the time. But, yeah, that was because of the Republican onslaught and the relentless propaganda on Fox News about how, they're coming to kill your grandma and shit. But the thing that's great about leftism is that you don't even need to make the argument of, yeah, I know what I'm doing isn't popular, but we're going to do it anyway. Because most of the shit is fucking popular. It's true. Maybe there are a handful of issues where, the left position is not the majority position. In fact, here's one. The death penalty. Death penalty is still over 50% popular in the U.S. And, of course, the left position is, we got to abolish the death penalty. At least 4% of the time we kill the wrong people, which means the state is murdering with your tax money, which is psychotic. Can't have a system like that where you kill innocent people sometime. That's just, state-sanctioned murder. But anyway, that's an example of an issue where the left doesn't have a popular position, but on most issues they do have a popular position, like Medicare for all, really popular, legalized marijuana, really popular, even universal basic income was over 50% at the height of the pandemic. The ideas that were considered extreme are now viewed as common sense in a way. When you look at the provisions of that Build Back Better bill from Biden, whether it's universal pre-K or free college or lower prescription drug prices, et cetera, all these things are popular. So you don't even need to make that trade-off of like, I know it's not popular, but we're going to push for it anyway and like, you know, show you we have balls. The argument should be what we're fighting for is really popular and we have balls. But of course, Democrats, number one, don't have balls. Number two, in their heart of hearts, the stuff that they actually end up fighting for is corporate positions, centrist positions. And unfortunately, the only time the Democratic fangs come out, it's when the establishment Democrats try to go for the jugular of insurgent progressives on the left.
To regulate the banks. We need to overhaul immigration. We need to end corporate...
Wait,
may have descended a bit, but so did your testicles. So don't stop. We need to regulate the banks. We need to overhaul immigration. We need to end corporate welfare, including at the Pentagon. We need to bring troops home from everywhere. We need to end the drug war. And we need to put terrorists and other human rights violators on trial in civilian courts, starting with Dick Cheney.
Oh.
Democrats.
Oh, so based. Hold on. We got to run that back. That was so based. This is what I'm saying, man. And this was like 2010, dog. Even up till like 2016, he still had his fucking moments. Like, there was a gradual decline over time, but up until like 2016, he still had his moments where he was like a net positive on the dialogue, man. On some issues, he's always been cringe. Like, you know, he goes way too far on Muslim stuff sometimes. That's obvious. That's the classic go-to. On Israel, he's terrible. What else is there that was... Oh, back in the day on Politically Incorrect, he actually argued that the Vietnam War was, like, worth it. It's like, what? He's way too partisan a Democrat, but when he talks about the actual issues, he freaks it. Like, listen to this list of issues he runs down, man.
We need to regulate the banks. We need to overhaul immigration. We need to end corporate welfare, including at the Pentagon. We need to bring troops home from everywhere. We need to end the drug war. And we need to put terrorists and other human rights violators on trial in civilian courts, starting with Dick Cheney. Democrats,
yes.
In conclusion, Democrats in America were put on earth to do one thing: drag the ignorant hillbilly half of this country into the next century.
And that's bad, Bill Maher. Like, he went from great to bad. Drag the ignorant hillbilly portion of the country. Like talking about people like that and just dehumanizing them, and you're not going to change minds, you're not going to convince people, and they're just going to dislike you for being an asshole to them. Like, try to convince the people who are convincible, and calling them rednecks and hillbillies, the defenses are going to go up. And so it's like, do you not actually want to win? Do you not want to change minds? And I'm not saying you cuck yourself on the policies and, like, start agreeing with them when they're wrong, but you treat people like human beings. And now I get he's a comedian, he's doing a comedy bit, he's being edgy, etc. But that's the sort of like, it's the dash of like elitism and classism and partisan hackery that, you know, at the time was probably appealing to me. But I definitely feel like I grew out of that. Like, people are people, man. And you'd be surprised. Like, some people who you might think you don't have anything in common with, if you actually have a conversation with them, you might be like, you know what? You're actually not all that bad. And then even if they might have a couple positions that are insane and, you know, really bad political positions, it's like, okay, we'll get to work, and maybe over time you change their mind. I mean, anyway, he went from really great to really bad there pretty quickly.
Which in their case is the 19th. And by passing health care, the Democrats saved their brand. A few months ago, Sarah Palin mockingly asked them, how's that hopey changey thing working out for you?
This was all part of that hope and change and transparency, and now a year later I got to ask those supporters of all that, how's that hopey changey stuff working out for you?
Great, actually. Thanks for asking. And how's that whole hooked on phonics thing working out for
you? All right. Well, that was good. I enjoyed that. Now we have I think this one is 2015. This was done in 2015. And again, even in 2015 up through 2016, you still see, man, he had his moments. He had his flashes. And I'm saying, like, real interesting, real solid commentary. Let's see this one.
And finally, new rule. If we learn anything from this moronic...
Yet again, I got the double speed on.
Debt ceiling debacle. It's that government is a lot like the subway. People tend to give the crazy person what he wants. The reason John Boehner could brag that he got 98% of what he demanded was that he had an ace card in the 60-odd Tea Partiers in his caucus. I don't say 60-odd because I'm not sure how many there are. There are 60 and they're odd. And Boehner could point to them and say, look, these guys don't give a fuck. They don't want compromise and solutions. The only response they're going for is, oh shit, how'd Skeeter get a gun? Yes, because we've all seen that movie where some psycho...
Steve Bannon's there? Holy shit. And Anthony Bourdain, rest in peace. Anthony Bourdain here. Shit.
A gun to a woman's head, and the rookie hostage negotiator isn't getting anywhere, so they bring in Mel Gibson, who can relate to the psycho because he's a psycho. That's what the Democrats need, their own Mel Gibson. The only way to pull the debate back from the far right is for liberals to elect their own slate of 60 unstable, Looney Tune, Mad as a Hatter, crazy motherfuckers. So please, liberals, start trolling Whole Foods parking lots, nude beaches, erotic cake stores, the MSNBC commissary. Anywhere where you might find angry left-wing lunatics to create a party within a party, as the Tea Party is a party within the Republicans. And to show that we will not back down in a crazy-off against anybody, the party within the Democratic Party will be called the Donner Party. That's right.
This one, I feel like this one is more comedic than some of the other ones we watched. But yeah, like the idea, even though he's joking about it, it's a solid one. Like, you have the insane fringe on the far right manifested in the Tea Party that just kept dragging the Overton window further and further to the right. And even John Boehner was frustrated with them. He thought they were insane. And they ended up getting a lot of what they wanted because they were just unwilling to compromise. And they were so bullheaded. And it's that old saying, which I'm probably going to butcher, but it's like, if you shoot for the stars, you might reach the moon. And they shot for the stars, and so they reached the moon. And they won a lot of legislative battles because of that. And so Maher's like, do that shit on the left. Do that shit on the left, and then you actually might have some real wins on the left. And this is never what ends up happening with Democrats. You know, the people who are like the quote-unquote far left that are elected Democrats are like the most reasonable of the people in D.C. Like Ilhan Omar's not crazy. She's just right about a lot of shit. Like, think about this whole thing that's going on now with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where Ilhan Omar was like, I'm not going to vote for these new sanctions on Russia because we've already sanctioned the shit out of them, and the new sanctions are just going to hurt Russian civilians. And I don't want to, like, sleepwalk into World War III. Like, that's just the correct position. So we don't even have any, like, Looney Tunes, like, quote-unquote far leftists. Like, nobody calls himself a communist or some shit in D.C. Nobody's like, you know, I'm an anarcho-syndicalist in D.C. Nobody's quoting, like, Michael Parenti or some shit. So, I mean, I like the idea. Even though he's joking, even though it's funny, like, there is a grain of truth in this shit. Like, why do... Like, I should be... Because I am, in real life, like, I view myself as, like, an international moderate. I don't think my ideas are extreme at all, and I line up with the polls of the American people. Like, the fact that I'm viewed as, like, a left-wing firebrand is fucking insane. And, you know, he's sort of shedding some light on this idea in a comedic way.
We will literally eat each other before we give an inch. And this is our leader, Face Ripper Monkey. That's right, we brought back Face Ripper Monkey. And don't tell me that there already is such an entity on the left, that it's the ACLU or Greenpeace or MoveOn.org. Oh, please. Those are educated people. Lawyers and scientists. We need loudmouths and bad dressers who can match the Tea people.
Low-key, Kirsten Sinema's like the worst dresser of all time, and she's the most corporate Democrat. I mean, she's just basically a Republican. So maybe the crazy dresser idea is not the way to go. Maybe, I don't know. Is there something that makes, like, corporate centrist, basically moderate Republicans the worst dressed? Because, yeah, if I had to guess, I probably would have guessed, I don't know, like, far left people, quote-unquote far left people, do you think like bad dresser when you think that? I mean, I do sort of think like hippie-ish, but I don't know if bad dress goes hand in hand with hippie-ish. Just like hippie is its own category, you know? But anyway, I'm babbling.
Maniac for maniac and say to them, you think you can be pea-brained, single-minded, and purple with rage? Well, the Donner Party is a dog that can bark at a pine cone for 9 days and not get tired. You say no new taxes on the rich, we say tax the rich at 100%.
But low-key, based. Like, over $1 billion? The idea of taxing net worth over $1 billion at 100%, I think makes perfect sense. I think that's a reasonable policy. Because that's like, nobody needs that amount of money, and once you get to that amount of money, that extreme wealth is inherently corrupting of a democracy. Like, because then you could just buy the system. You could buy local governments, you could buy state governments, you could buy off federal politicians, and you could just get whatever you want enacted, and that is inherently undemocratic. I mean, it just becomes, by its very nature, an oligarchy at that point. If you have money in politics and you have people with billions and billions and billions of dollars, so taxing everything over $1 billion of net worth at 100%, I sort of think that's a reasonable policy. I mean, I'm open to hearing, you know, other points of view on that and other arguments on that. Somebody could potentially convince me, like, hey, 100% is not the way to go, but don't tell me we can't do like 70% or something. You know what I'm saying? And back in the day in the U.S., we had a tax rate for the rich that the peak, I think, was 91%. The top marginal tax rate in the U.S. was about 91%. I think that was under Eisenhower. And then Kennedy lowered it to 70%, and Reagan dropped it all the way to 28%. And I don't remember what the number was on the income that it had to be per year to be taxed at 91%. But I think it was like maybe the modern day equivalent of $5 million a year or something. Like everything you made over $5 million a year was taxed at like 91%. Now, to be fair, that's just the nominal rate, which isn't the actual rate they paid. But the real rate they paid was somewhere in the ballpark of like between 40 and 50%. So everything you made over like $5 million was taxed between like 40 and 50%. Now that number's way lower. Now that number's like 38% or something like that. So, or maybe even 35. I lost track of where it is in between because they changed it a few times. It changed from Bush to Obama, and I think it changed Obama to Trump too. You have the Trump tax cut bill. And I don't think, Biden hasn't gotten anything on that flipped it. But anyway, 100% tax rate for, wealth over or net worth over $1 billion. I think that's kind of reasonable. It's certainly a debatable policy. But anyway, I'm sort of getting mixed up too between, this is a side point, I'm getting way too wonky and nerdy now, but wealth over, net worth over $1 billion being taxed at 100%, I think that would be considered a wealth tax, right? Because it's on the entire net worth. Whereas when we had that 91% tax rate, that wasn't a wealth tax. That was a top marginal tax rate. So it was on income and not net worth. Anyway, very nerdy point, but all the, the tax wonks can tell me if I'm correct on that.
You call for a constitutional amendment banning abortion. We call for a federally funded partial birth abortions at the drive-thru at McDonald's. You want Reagan on the $50 bill? We insist on Janine Garofalo.
Janine Garofalo.
Because apparently crazy is the new sensible, and we will not lose the war of bad ideas. So here's what else we want. Guns. Still legal, but no new guns may be produced. Therefore, to get one, you have to literally pry it from another guy's cold, dead hand. Also, not only must gay history be taught in public schools, but also gay math. With word problems like, if the park ranger inspects the restrooms every 4 hours, and it takes Glenn 12 minutes to get a stranger off, how many strangers can Glenn service between inspections? 20. Thanks, Doc. In any budget stalemate, the Donner Party will insist on a rider to the bill stipulating that Jesus is just a guy. And if you so much as thank him for scoring a touchdown, the state will take your children. And you must perform 200 hours of community theater. And the other bill that I'm afraid the Donner Party must insist on is the We Want Everything They Have Act of 2011, which guarantees all Americans what Europeans get, like free health care.
Oh, they said 20. I thought this was 2015. I think it was uploaded in 2015, but I guess it's from 2011.
And 6 weeks.
What you said free health care.
Party must insist on is the We Want Everything They Have Act of 2011, which guarantees all Americans what Europeans get, like free health care and 6 weeks. And 6 weeks of paid vacation, which sounds so good, I think I'll start mine right now. We'll see you back here on September 16th.
Yeah, so there you go, man. I mean, Bill Maher had his moments. You know, they're fewer and far between now, but you can see why when I was first getting into politics, I was really attracted to his style and his commentary and his charisma. And, you know, now I look at him in a much different light. I don't view it as confidence. I view it more as like smug arrogance. I think his liberal elitism and his partisan hackery kind of overrode the better parts of him nowadays. But yeah, you can see why I was so attracted to his commentary. And you know, you guys got to remember, there was a time, especially in the Bush years, where, you know, you didn't hear these things in mainstream media at all. Like you heard, he was the one who actually was, in my opinion, sort of leading the charge on a lot of the anti-Bush stuff and talking about the wars and talking about the tax cuts for the rich and the deregulation and the torture. And it just felt like he really struck a nerve with me for a long time. So anyway, there you have it. Some of the stuff is cringe, you know, but a lot of it is just is based Bill Maher.